Applause. Take a deep breath and brace yourself for an absolutely mind-blowing account of what might be the government's worst nightmare. A military operation gone haywire in the depths of the Olympic National Forest. My name's Mike Brennan, and I'm about to share a story that'll make your skin crawl and your jaw hit the floor. I witnessed a military helicopter go down after a Bigfoot encounter, and that's just the beginning. What followed was a cascade of events so terrifying and unbelievable that I still have nightmares about it, even though 2 other witnesses saw the whole thing with me. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Let me introduce my team first. I run Northwest Anomaly Research with my 2 colleagues. Dr. Alison Chen, a brilliant wildlife biologist who specialized in undocumented species before joining our little operation, and Devin Walker, our tech wizard who handles all our equipment and has a knack for finding patterns in data where nobody else can. We've been investigating strange occurrences in the Pacific Northwest for about 5 years now, building a reputation as the go-to team when things get weird in the woods. We set out early on a Tuesday morning in late October, planning a 4-day expedition into the most remote section of the Olympic National Forest. The weather forecast was perfect, crisp autumn days with highs in the low 50s, clear skies, and just enough chill in the air to keep the bugs away. The kind of conditions that make you grateful to be alive and out in nature. Got the thermal imagers packed? I asked Devin as we loaded up our modified Jeep Wrangler at the trailhead parking lot. The sun was just starting to peek over the mountains to the east, casting long shadows across the empty parking area. Devin nodded, patting the waterproof case beside him. 2 FLIR Scout 3s and the new long-range unit. Battery banks are all charged up too. Alison emerged from the tree line, zipping up her jacket as she approached. She'd gone to check the first trail camera we'd set up the night before. "Anything on the camera?" I asked, already knowing the answer from her expression. "Just a couple of deer and an owl," she replied, helping us load the rest of our gear. "But that's to be expected. The really promising area is about 6 miles, according to those forestry workers' reports." I nodded, recalling the interviews we'd conducted 3 weeks prior. 2 U.S. Forest Service employees had been marking trees for a conservation project when they encountered what they described as a massive, upright creature covered in dark hair that moved with impossible speed through dense underbrush no human could navigate. What made their account particularly compelling was that they weren't looking for fame. In fact, they'd asked to remain anonymous, fearing ridicule from their colleagues. "What do you think we'll find this time?" Devin asked as we finished securing our equipment. I shrugged, trying to maintain professional detachment. "Same as always. We follow the evidence wherever it leads. No expectations, no biases." But the truth was, I had a good feeling about this expedition. Over the years, this particular region had yielded more credible sightings than anywhere else in the state. The locals called it Shadow Canyon, a remote valley nestled between 2 steep ridges, rarely visited even by the most adventurous hikers. "I still think it's unusual that the activity has increased so much in the last 2 months, Alison remarked, as we locked up the Jeep and shouldered our packs. 8 sightings in the same general area? That's unprecedented." "Could be seasonal migration," I suggested. "Or maybe habitat disruption from that new logging operation to the north. Whatever it is," Devin added with a grin, "I just hope our cameras catch it this time." We set off down the trail, a well-maintained path that would eventually give way to more challenging terrain. The forest embraced us, ancient trees towering overhead, their leaves a spectacular mosaic of reds, oranges, and golds. The scent of pine and damp earth filled the air, and the only sounds were our footsteps on the soft ground and the occasional call of birds in the canopy above. For the first few miles, we hiked in comfortable silence, each of us lost in our own thoughts and observations. This was the part of our work I loved most, being immersed in nature, away from the noise and distractions of civilization. Out here, anything seemed possible. Did you hear that? Alison stopped suddenly, cocking her head. We all froze, straining to pick up whatever had caught her attention. After a moment, I heard it too, a faint mechanical sound in the distance like the whoomp, whoomp, whoomp of helicopter rotors. Military, Devin said confidently. That's a Black Hawk or something similar. Joint Base Lewis McCord isn't far as the crow flies, I reasoned. Probably just a training exercise. But Alison frowned, clearly unsettled. They don't usually train this deep in the national forest. There are designated areas for that. And keep moving, I suggested, not wanting to get sidetracked. We still have a lot of ground to cover before we reach the base campsite. As we continued our trek, the helicopter sounds faded, but I couldn't shake a growing sense of unease. Military activity in this area was unusual, especially on a weekday. I made a mental note to check if there were any scheduled exercises when we got back to civilization. By mid-afternoon, we'd reached our base camp location, a small clearing near a stream, perfectly situated at the mouth of Shadow Canyon. We worked efficiently to set up our camp, a central tent for equipment and analysis, and 3 smaller one-person tents arranged around it. I'm going to set up the perimeter sensors, Devin announced, grabbing a bag of small devices that would alert us to any large animal movements during the night. I'll handle the camera traps, Alison said. I want to place them along that trail we spotted on the satellite images. I nodded. I'll get camp fully established and start prepping our survey grid for tomorrow. We separated to tackle our assigned tasks, planning to regroup before sunset to finalize our strategy for the night watch. I had just finished securing our food in bear canisters when I heard it again, the distinctive sound of military helicopters, but closer this time, and it sounded like more than one. I stepped out from under the canopy of trees to get a better look at the sky. Through gaps in the forest cover, I spotted them, 2 black helicopters moving slowly across the valley, much lower than standard flight protocols would dictate for a national forest. They weren't just passing through, they were searching for something. Just as I was about to call out to Alison and Devin, my radio crackled to life. Mike, you seeing this? Devin's voice came through tight with excitement. I'm up on the ridge, to the west. They've got spotlights scanning the forest floor. Stay where you are, I responded. Maintain visual, but keep your distance. Mike. This time it was Alison's voice, urgent and breathless. You need to get up here now. North Ridge. About 300 yards from camp. Something in her tone sent a chill up my spine. I grabbed my pack with the essentials, camera, binoculars, first aid kit, and moved quickly through the trees toward her position. The climb up to the ridge was steep, but adrenaline propelled me forward. When I finally crested the top, I found Alison crouched behind a fallen log, her high-powered binoculars trained on the opposite side of the valley. What is it? I whispered, moving to join her. Wordlessly, she handed me the binoculars and pointed. I followed her direction and adjusted the focus. At first, I saw only the dense forest canopy. Then the helicopters came into view again, hovering low over a particular section of the opposite ridge. Their spotlights carved bright circles in the gathering dusk. No, lower, Alison instructed. At the tree line, where that rock outcropping juts out. I shifted my view downward, scanning the area she described. Then I saw it, and my blood turned to ice. Standing at the edge of the trees was a figure, massive, easily 8 feet tall, with broad shoulders and proportions that were undeniably not human. It was watching the helicopters with what I could only describe as intelligent interest, its head tilted slightly upward. The creature's body was covered in dark, reddish-brown hair, and even from this distance, I could see the muscles rippling beneath its powerful frame as it shifted its weight. Holy shit, I breathed, unable to tear my eyes away. "Are you getting this on camera?" "Started recording the moment I spotted it," Alison confirmed, her voice barely above a whisper, despite the fact that the creature was at least half a mile away across the valley. We watched, transfixed, as the Sasquatch, because what else could it possibly be, continued to observe the helicopters. It showed no sign of fear, merely curiosity. Then something changed. One of the helicopters dipped lower, its spotlight directly illuminating the creature. For a brief moment, the Sasquatch was caught in the beam of light, fully exposed. Then, with a speed that seemed impossible for something so large, it turned and disappeared into the forest. "Did you see that?" Alison gasped. "The way it moved." I nodded, still processing what I'd witnessed. No human could move that fast through dense underbrush. The helicopter that had spotted the creature suddenly changed its flight pattern, dropping even lower and moving directly toward the spot where the Sasquatch had vanished. The second helicopter followed, both now clearly in pursuit. "Mike, Alison, come in!" Devin's voice crackled over the radio, nearly making me jump. "Did you see that? The choppers are chasing something." "We saw it," I confirmed, my mouth dry. "Devin, stay where you are. Keep recording everything." "Holy shit, guys." Devin's voice was trembling now. "I don't think these are regular military. The helicopters don't have any markings. And, wait, they're deploying something. Looks like men on ropes." My mind raced, trying to make sense of what was happening. Unmarked military helicopters pursuing a Sasquatch? It sounded like the plot of a bad conspiracy movie. Yet here we were, witnessing it in real time. "We need to get closer," I decided, already calculating the fastest route across the valley. "But carefully. If these guys are black ops or something, the last thing we want is to get on their radar." Alison looked at me, her expression serious. "Mike, think about this. If they're willing to mount this kind of operation, they're not going to be happy about witnesses." She was right, of course. But this could be the breakthrough we'd been searching for all these years. Not just evidence of Sasquatch existence, but proof of government knowledge and involvement. The implications were staggering. "We'll be careful," I promised. "We stay at a safe distance, document everything, and extract if there's any sign they've spotted us." Alison nodded reluctantly, and we radioed the plan to Devin, who would meet us at a predetermined point on the opposite ridge. As we made our way down from our vantage point and began the trek across the valley floor, the helicopter's sounds grew more distant, but didn't disappear entirely. Twilight was deepening into night by the time we started climbing the opposite ridge. We moved as quickly as we dared through the darkening forest, using red-filtered headlamps to preserve our night vision while minimizing the chance of being spotted. "The helicopters are still circling," Devin reported when we finally reached him. "But they've moved further north. I think they lost track of whatever it was." "They didn't lose track," Alison said firmly. "They spotted a Sasquatch. We saw it clear as day." Devin's eyes widened. "You actually saw it, not just a heat signature or something?" I nodded. "Crystal clear, at least 8 feet tall, massive build, reddish-brown hair, no question about what it was." "And now we know why we've been getting so many sightings in this area lately," Alison added. "They're not just passing through, they're being hunted." The implication hung heavy in the air. If the military, or some covert branch of it, was actively pursuing Sasquatch, it meant they not only knew these creatures existed, but considered them important enough to dedicate significant resources to tracking them down. "Let's get closer to their operation," I decided. "But we stick together from here on out." We moved carefully along the ridge, guided by the distant sound of the helicopters. After about 20 minutes, we found a spot that offered a clear view while providing ample cover among a cluster of boulders and fallen trees. The helicopters were now hovering about a quarter-mile away, their spotlights scanning a section of dense forest, Through my binoculars, I could make out figures on the ground, men in dark tactical gear moving with military precision through the trees. "I'm counting 8 personnel," Devin whispered, looking through his own optics. "Armed. They're wearing some kind of specialized gear I don't recognize. Look at the shoulder patches," Alison pointed out. "No standard military insignia." I focused on one of the figures, noting the blank space where unit patches would normally be. "Some kind of black ops unit?" "Has to be," Devin agreed. "But why would they be interested in Sasquatch?" Before anyone could offer a theory, one of the helicopters suddenly changed its flight pattern, moving rapidly to the north. The men on the ground reacted immediately, converging toward what appeared to be a new target area. "They've spotted it. Again," I realized, adjusting my position to get a better view. Through the binoculars, I could just make out a large, dark figure moving with astonishing speed through the forest. The Sasquatch was running on 2 legs, but occasionally dropped to all 4s to navigate particularly dense sections of underbrush. Its movement was fluid, purposeful, nothing like the shambling gait often depicted in popular culture. The helicopter that had detected the creature was now flying dangerously low, its spotlight fixed on the moving target. The second helicopter maintained a higher position, presumably coordinating the ground team's movements. What happened next occurred so quickly that I almost missed it. The Sasquatch suddenly stopped its retreat and turned to face the pursuing helicopter. Even from our distance, there was something chilling about the deliberate nature of its stance. Shoulders squared, head lifted, an almost defiant posture. The helicopter dipped lower, perhaps trying to get a better view or intimidate the creature. And then, I still can't believe what I saw, the Sasquatch picked up something from the forest floor. A log, a rock, I couldn't tell exactly what. But in one fluid motion, it hurled the object upward with devastating force and accuracy. There was a terrible sound, the crack of impact followed by the scream of metal as the projectile struck one of the helicopter's rotors. The aircraft immediately began to spin wildly, its pilot clearly struggling for control. "Oh my God," Alison gasped beside me. "It hit the helicopter." We watched in horror as the damaged helicopter spiraled downward, the pilot fighting a losing battle against physics and gravity. The second helicopter backed off immediately, gaining altitude as its companion went down. The crash itself was partially obscured by the trees, but we felt the impact, a shuddering boom that echoed through the valley, followed by the sharp crack of trees snapping and a final, ominous thud. For a moment, we were frozen in shock, struggling to process what we'd just witnessed. Then training and instinct kicked in. "There could be survivors," I said, already getting to my feet. "We need to get down there." "Mike, wait," Devin grabbed my arm. "Think about this. That's a military operation. If we go charging in there are people injured or worse." I cut him off. "Whatever's going on here, we can't just sit back and do nothing." Alison stood up, her face resolute. "Mike's right, but we need to be smart about this. The other helicopter and ground team will be converging on the crash site. We approach carefully, stay hidden, and assess the situation before making our presence known." Devin looked between us, then nodded reluctantly. "Okay, but at the first sign this is going sideways, we extract." "Agreed?" "Agreed," I confirmed. "Let's move." We made our way down the ridge as quickly as we dared, guided by the faint glow of what I feared was the beginning of a fire at the crash site. The forest that had seemed so peaceful hours ago now felt ominous, filled with shadows that seemed to move at the corner of my vision. As we drew closer to the crash, the smell of fuel and burning metal filled the air. We could hear voices now. Dilin, shouting, commands being issued, the crackle of radio communications. We dropped to a crouch and moved more cautiously, using the underbrush for cover. Finally, we reached a position about 50 yards from the crashed helicopter. From our vantage point behind a fallen tree covered in moss, we had a clear view of the scene. The helicopter lay on its side, partially embedded in the soft forest floor. Its main rotor was a mangled mess of metal, and a small fire had broken out near the tail section. 4 men in tactical gear were moving around the crash site. 2 appeared to be checking for survivors in the cockpit, while the others established a perimeter. "Anyone see the pilot?" Devin whispered. I scanned the area, then pointed. "There, they've pulled someone out." A figure in a flight suit was being carried away from the wreckage by 2 of the tactical team members. Even from our position, I could see the pilot was conscious but injured, their helmet removed to reveal a shock of short blonde hair. The second helicopter was now circling overhead, its spotlight illuminating the crash site. More members of the ground team were arriving, emerging from the forest with weapons raised. "What about the Sasquatch?" Alison whispered. "Any sign of it?" I shook my head. "Nothing. It's probably long gone by now." But even as I said it, I felt a prickling sensation on the back of my neck, the primitive, instinctual feeling of being watched. Slowly, I turned my head to scan the tree line behind the crash site. It took me a moment to spot it, and when I did, my breath caught in my throat. There, partially concealed among the shadows of the ancient trees, stood the Sasquatch. It was watching the scene with what I could only describe as calculated interest, its massive form eerily still, except for the slight rise and fall of its chest. 3 o'clock, I breathed. At the edge of the trees, it's still here. Alison and Devin shifted slightly to follow my gaze. I heard Alison's sharp intake of breath when she spotted it. "It's watching them," she whispered. "But why didn't it run? Any normal animal would be miles away by now." "Because it's not a normal animal," I replied, unable to tear my eyes away from the creature. "It's intelligent. It's curious." As we watched, the Sasquatch shifted its weight slightly, causing a branch to crack beneath its foot. The sound, though faint, carried in the night air. One of the tactical team members snapped his head in the direction of the noise, raising his weapon and activating a mounted flashlight. The beam cut through the darkness, landing directly on the Sasquatch's position. For a heart-stopping moment, the creature was illuminated in harsh white light. Its massive frame, powerful limbs, and startlingly expressive face now fully visible. Rather than flee, the Sasquatch held its ground, eyes reflecting the light like a deer caught in headlights. I heard shouts from the team members, saw them raising their weapons, and braced myself for gunfire. But instead of shooting, one of them, clearly the leader, held up a fist, the universal military signal to hold position. He spoke urgently, into a radio, eyes never leaving the Sasquatch. The creature seemed to understand the precariousness of its situation. With deliberate slowness, it began to back away, still facing the humans. There was an unmistakable intelligence in its movements, not the panicked retreat of a frightened animal, but the calculated withdrawal of a being that understood the threat it faced. Just before it disappeared into the deeper shadows of the forest, the Sasquatch did something that sent a shiver down my spine. It raised one massive hand, fingers splayed, in what looked for all the world like a gesture of farewell. Then it was gone, vanishing into the darkness with surprising silence for such a large being. "Did you see that?" Devin hissed. "It waved at them." "Not just waved," Alison corrected, her voice trembling with excitement and disbelief. "That was American Sign Language, the sign for goodbye." The implication was staggering. If Alison was right, and she had taken ASL courses in college, it meant the Sasquatch wasn't just intelligent, it had somehow been exposed to or taught human communication systems. We had no time to process this revelation, however, as the situation at the crash site was evolving rapidly. The tactical team leader was issuing new orders, pointing to the area where the Sasquatch had disappeared, and then to several of his men, clearly organizing a pursuit party. "They're going after it," I realized. "We need to..." But what exactly we needed to do, I never got to articulate. A sharp crack behind us made all 3 of us whirl around in alarm. Standing not 10 feet away was another tactical team member, his weapon trained directly at us. "Don't move," he commanded, his voice cold and professional. "Hands where I can see them." Slowly, we raised our hands. My mind raced, trying to formulate a plausible explanation for our presence, but the truth was so outlandish, I doubted he'd believe it. "We're wildlife researchers," Alison tried, her voice remarkably steady despite the circumstances. "We heard the crash and came to help." The man's expression remained impassive behind his tactical goggles. "Stay put," he ordered, then spoke into his radio. "Sir, I've got 3 civilians here, about 50 yards west of the crash site." There was a brief response, and he nodded. "Roger that. Bringing them in." He gestured with his weapon. "On your feet. Move toward the clearing, slowly." As we stood and began walking in the direction indicated, I exchanged glances with Alison and Devin. The same thought was clearly running through all our minds. We were now witnesses to something the government obviously wanted to keep secret. And that put us in a very dangerous position indeed. We were marched into the clearing, where the helicopter lay smoldering. The tactical team had established a perimeter, and the injured pilot was being treated by a medic. As we approached, the team leader turned to face us. He was tall and imposing, with a closely cropped beard and the hard, assessing eyes of someone who had seen combat. "Who are you people, and what are you doing in this restricted area?" he demanded. "Restricted area," I repeated, feigning confusion. "This is national forest land. We're conducting licensed wildlife research." The man's eyes narrowed. "At night? Miles from any established trail?" "We're tracking nocturnal predator movements," Alison jumped in smoothly. "We have all the proper permits if you'd like to see them." The leader studied us for a long moment, clearly skeptical. "What did you see before my man found you?" It was the question I'd been dreading. Tell the truth and potentially put ourselves in even more danger? Or lie and risk being caught in the deception? "We saw your helicopter go down," Devin said before I could decide. "We were on the ridge conducting observations when it happened. We came to see if we could help." It wasn't exactly a lie, but it conveniently omitted the Sasquatch and our observation. Of their pursuit, the leader seemed to consider this, then turned to confer quietly with another team member. While they were distracted, I took the opportunity to survey our surroundings more carefully. The crashed helicopter was clearly military, a modified Black Hawk as Devin had suggested, but devoid of any identifying markings. The tactical team, now that I could see them up close, wore uniforms I didn't recognize, with patches that had been deliberately removed or obscured. Most concerning was the equipment I spotted being unloaded from backpacks, specialized capture. Gear including what looked like heavy-duty tranquilizer guns, reinforced restraints large enough for a bear, and some kind of electronic devices I couldn't identify. They weren't just tracking the Sasquatch. They were planning to capture it, the Zoom. Team leader turned back to us, his decision apparently made. "You 3 will be coming with us. This is now a matter of national security." "We've done nothing wrong," I protested. "You have no authority to detain us." The man stepped closer, his voice dropping to ensure only we could hear him. "Let me be very clear. What happened here tonight never occurred. The aircraft you saw was never here, and if you persist in believing otherwise, you'll discover just how much authority we actually have." The threat was unmistakable. I glanced at Alison and Devin, seeing my own concern reflected in their eyes. We were in, way over our heads. "Now," the leader continued, "you will be escorted to a secure location for debriefing. Your cooperation will determine what happens next." Before we could respond, a shout came from the perimeter. "Sir, movement in the tree line, northeast quadrant." All heads turned toward the indicated direction, the spotlight from the circling. Helicopter immediately swung to illuminate the area, and there it was again, the Sasquatch, standing just within the tree line. But this time, it wasn't alone. Behind it, partially obscured by the massive creature's form, I caught glimpses of what appeared to be two smaller figures. "My God," Alison breathed beside me, "it's protecting its young." The realization changed everything. This wasn't just about a single Sasquatch anymore. We were witnessing a family unit. The implications for the species were enormous, confirmed. Social structures, parental care, possibly even an established community in these woods. But there was no time to process this breakthrough. The tactical team was already moving, weapons raised, coordinating via radio with the helicopter overhead. "Trank guns only," the leader ordered. "Command wants the specimens alive." Specimens. The clinical coldness of the term made my stomach turn. These were intelligent beings, possibly even sentient, and they were about to be captured, separated, and subjected to who knows what kind of testing. I couldn't let that happen. A glance at Alison and Devin confirmed they felt the same way. "We have to do something," Alison whispered urgently. "Like what?" Devin hissed back. "In case you hadn't noticed, we're a bit outgunned here." I scanned the clearing, looking for any opportunity. The tactical team's attention was focused entirely on the Sasquatch family at the tree line. The helicopter's spotlight was fixed in the same direction. Our guard had moved several steps away, his back partially turned to us as he watched the unfolding situation. "It was now or never. When I give the signal," I murmured, barely moving my lips. "Run for the trees behind us. Split up. Meet back at base camp. Ready?" They gave subtle nods, tensing for action. I waited until the tactical team began to advance toward the tree line, then shouted, "Now!" We bolted in 3 different directions, using the momentary confusion to our advantage. I heard shouts behind us, but no gunfire. They needed us alive for questioning. I crashed through the underbrush, branches whipping at my face, my heart pounding in my ears. Behind me, I could hear pursuit, heavy footsteps, and the crackle of radio communications. I pushed myself harder, drawing on adrenaline and my knowledge of the terrain. After what felt like an eternity but was probably only minutes, the sounds of pursuit began to fade. I'd managed to put some distance between myself and my pursuers, but I knew they wouldn't give up easily. These were trained military personnel with night vision equipment and tracking skills. I needed to be smarter, not just faster. Spotting a small stream ahead, I splashed into it and began following it downstream, hoping the water would mask my scent and footprints. The icy water soaked through my boots, numbing my feet, but I kept moving. As I rounded a bend in the stream, I nearly collided with a massive form that loomed suddenly out of the darkness. I stifled a cry of alarm as I recognized what stood before me. The same Sasquatch from earlier, its powerful frame silhouetted against the night sky. For a heartbeat that seemed to stretch into eternity, we stared at each other. This close, I could see details I'd missed before. The intelligent gleam in its deep-set eyes, the surprisingly expressive features of its face, the silver streaks in its reddish-brown hair that suggested age and wisdom. It regarded me with what seemed like curiosity rather than aggression. Then, deliberately, it raised its hand in the same gesture Alison had identified as ASL for goodbye. But this time, it followed with another motion, pointing deeper into the forest, then at me, clearly indicating a direction. It was telling me where to go. I hesitated only a moment before nodding my understanding. The Sasquatch watched me for another second, then turned and moved away with that same impossible silence, disappearing into the forest like a shadow melting into darkness. I stood frozen, trying to process what had just happened. The creature hadn't just recognized me as different from the military team. It had actively chosen to help me escape. The implications were staggering, but there was no time to dwell on the encounter. In the distance, I could hear the helicopter, changing course, likely redirected to search for us. I needed to keep moving, to find Alison and Devin, and to get as far away from this operation as possible. As I continued downstream, following the direction the Sasquatch had indicated, one thought kept circling in my mind. What we'd witnessed tonight changed everything. Not just about Sasquatch research, but about our understanding of intelligence, evolution, and most disturbing of all, what our government was willing to do to keep certain discoveries hidden from the public. If we made it out of these woods alive, the world would never be the same. The sound of the helicopter grew louder again, its spotlight sweeping through the trees in a methodical search pattern. I ducked lower, pressing myself against the stream bank, my heart hammering against my ribs. Whatever happened next, I knew with absolute certainty that our lives had irrevocably changed. We had stumbled onto something extraordinary, not just the existence of Sasquatch, but evidence of their intelligence, their family structures, and most chillingly, a government black ops team dedicated to capturing them. If we survived to tell our tale, the ripples would spread far beyond our small research team. But first, we had to make it through the night, evade our pursuers, and find our way back to each other. And somewhere in these dark woods, a family of Sasquatches was fighting for their freedom too, creatures that, if tonight was any indication, were far more like us than anyone had ever imagined. The truth was out there in these woods, and now so were we, running for our lives, carrying a secret that powerful people would do anything to keep buried. I followed the Sasquatch's directions, eventually reuniting with Alison and Devin at our base camp. The military was closing. In fast, we grabbed only essential gear and evidence before fleeing deeper into the wilderness. They're hunting a family unit, I explained breathlessly. The Sasquatch wasn't just defending itself, it was protecting its young. And it used sign language, Alison added. This changes everything we know about their intelligence. We spent a terrifying night evading Black Ops teams, their helicopters scanning the forest with thermal imaging. Dawn brought an unexpected ally. The male Sasquatch returned, deliberately leading us to a hidden cave system. Inside, we discovered what the military was really after. Ancient paintings showing Sasquatch and humans interacting peacefully. Carbon, dating on similar artifacts, suggested they were over 15,000 years old, evidence of a parallel intelligent species that had shared North America with humans since the last ice age. This is why they're desperate to capture them, Devin whispered. Proof of another intelligent species would rewrite history. We documented everything and escaped the forest 3 days later, our evidence intact. The world wasn't ready for the truth, but we were determined to protect it and the extraordinary beings who had trusted us with their secret. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.